Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for your time today. Big special thank you to Jerry and Staff Assembly for this opportunity. Thanks also for the intros. I'll go ahead and skip over that portion. But here with us today, presenting on behalf of the entire task force, we have Catherine Weston, Corey Rosas, and Ray Soto. We are honored to represent the entire task force and also would like to thank all the task force members who made today possible. For the first portion of our presentation, Catherine will be giving a brief overview of the task force's charge, our rationale, and an introduction of our recommendations. So with that, I will give the mic to Catherine.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Weston, and as has already been said, I'm the Assistant to the Chair and Academic Personnel Coordinator in the Department of Neurobiology. And additionally, I am a member of the Staff Assembly EDI Task Force. And I will start off our presentation today by giving some context on this task force and our charge. In 2019, the UC system conducted an employee engagement survey across all UC campuses. The survey, administered by the University of California Office of the President, included a number of categories, including diversity and inclusion. The 2019 survey showed a 73% favorable rating for diversity and inclusion, reflecting a 2-point decrease from the 2017 survey and a 3-point difference from the US norm. Based on the unfavorable survey results and decline in satisfaction since the 2017 survey, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Staff Assembly Task Force was formed as one of the remedies to this problem. As part of the Staff Assembly, our charge is to give a voice and place to the staff who are invested in the success of the university as a whole and its EDI policies. The task force met bi-weekly for 8 months, and during that time identified 30+ recommendations using an EDI framework. We were limited to picking 3 recommendations to focus on in the final presentation to the Chancellor's Cabinet, which took place on April 14th, 2021. The recommendations that we did not choose this time around are in our report's appendix and are ready for the next iteration of this task force to tackle. Before getting to our recommendations, it is important to talk terminology so that everyone understands the concepts we worked with to frame our discussions and actions. As a new task force, we began by defining the terms that we associate with our committee in accordance with the UCLA EDI office. So for equity, we have justice according to natural law or right, specifically freedom from bias or favoritism. Diversity is the condition of having or being composed of differing elements, variety, especially the inclusion of different types of people, such as people of different races or cultures in a group or organization. And inclusion, the act or practice of including and accommodating people who have historically been excluded, as because of their race, gender, sexuality, or ability. We determined that an important addition is the term belonging, as it is often left out of EDI, but is the central goal of these efforts. And belonging is the human emotional need to be accepted by a group, the sense that one feels as though they are seen, understood, and valued. And for us, belonging is the key to the implementation and outcomes of this and any EDI endeavor. To illustrate these points, our group expanded on a quote from Verna Myers, who said that diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. In our discussions, we wanted to expand on this to include our views of equity and belonging. And for us, and thanks to Chantel Eastman and Ray Soto, we say that equity is having the resources to come to the dance, and you get to dance for every song. And for belonging, we feel that belonging is feeling comfortable to dance. With those definitions in mind, we came up with recommendations in various areas of campus life, but again, we had to limit the number we presented to the Chancellor's Cabinet. Our task force, for our recommendation overview, our task force recommends creating a series of training and accountability measures designed to help managers and supervisors create a more inclusive environment for all employees. Further, we recommend that there be substantive efforts to change the university culture so that staff who have often been overlooked have a real voice in what happens. So here is a brief overview of our main recommendations. 1, EDI training curriculum for managers and staff. 2, 360 reviews for managers and supervisors. And 3, an inclusive culture change. So one of the questions we asked ourselves was, why? Why is it important to empower managers and individually contributing staff to embrace EDI principles? And this is what we uncovered. Gender and ethnic diversity is highly concentrated among support staff. And this is according to a 2020 UCLA staff workforce profile. And the diversity seen in support staff is not reflected in managers. So managers need that training even more so to effectively manage their teams. Second, inclusive work environments help reduce turnover and improve retention. And improving retention saves the university considerable time and money. Overall, our recommendations are meant to ensure managers are equipped with the training they need to foster a better sense of belonging for all direct reports. We want to empower employees to be able to provide feedback to supervisors in ways that are safe from retaliation and encourage supervisors to meaningfully involve their staff when making decisions that would be carried out by said employees and will impact their day-to-day experiences. Ultimately, these are steps to create a more inclusive work environment that will help reduce turnover and improve retention, thus saving the university time and money. UCLA prides itself on being a leader in higher education as well as a change maker with far-reaching influence. In order to be a leader in EDI work worthy of the UCLA brand, change is needed, and our recommendations help move us towards that progress. So now I would like to give the mic back to Morgan, who will discuss our first recommendation.
Thank you, Catherine. So I'll dive into our first recommendation of developing an EDI curriculum for managers and staff. We recommend developing a series of in-person or live virtual training that is required for managers, supervisors, and HR, both department and campus employees. Creating an inclusive environment starts with who we hire and how we support them. So we believe that training supervisors and their staff in the following areas will help create more inclusive work environments for all. Required EDI training demonstrates the importance of EDI at UCLA, similar to other campus priorities. For example, harassment training. Facilitated training is ideal for managers and supervisors who must be able to understand and apply the information. We also recommend providing supplemental annual training for all campus employees in multiple formats so that it's accessible at any time, such as asynchronous formats, in-person, hybrid, and virtual Zoom. Live and virtual training for all employees creates accessible opportunities for all. There may even be opportunities to provide vendors and volunteers with essential information to ensure they understand UCLA's commitment to EDI. So the EDI curriculum should focus on the following areas: inclusive leadership, inclusive hiring and interviewing, anti-racism in the workplace, cultural awareness and humility, and managing difficult conversations. And we also recommend that all trainings be accompanied by attendance optional debrief spaces, as well as affinity spaces to further address anti-racism practices in the workplace and further a sense of belonging at UCLA. Okay, going back to this slide. So we focus on managerial and senior staff because in looking at the personnel program by race, ethnicity, We see limited diversity among managerial and senior staff. According to the 2020 staff workforce profile, UCLA senior management is 57% white, both domestic and international, and managers and senior professionals are 49% and 43% white, respectively. Our desired outcome is to show institutional support for best practices in EDI and establish accountability for managers and non-managerial staff by making this a required training. This will equip departments with the tools they need to address EDI concerns, needs, and make progress in those areas. Now I'll turn it over to Corey Rosas from UCLA Alumni Diversity Programs and Initiatives and Task Force co-lead to present our second recommendation.
Thanks, Morgan. And so moving on to our second recommendation is to provide annual 360 reviews for all managers and supervisors that includes an EDI component in that review. In implementing this process, first starts with our recommendation of providing an EDI curriculum that provides all employees with EDI definitions and best practices to advance EDI efforts in their own departments, ultimately moving the university toward a more actively anti-racist work environment. And like 360 reviews that are already in place for UCLA's most senior management, these reviews would create the opportunity for two-way feedback of all managers and supervisors, in contrast to the current system, which comes from a top-down approach. This new approach would encourage feedback from all staff members to drive cultural change, a key aspect of our third recommendation as well. Centralizing the process with HR also allows for anonymous feedback for all employees while eliminating fear of retaliation for providing honest reviews on the climate of their work environment. A 360 review process would inform campus leaders about the areas where the university's managerial staff excel, as well as those that may need improvement. Incorporating an equity, diversity, and inclusion component in the 360 review process also demonstrates UCLA's commitment to creating an inclusive environment and culture of belonging for all. This would also provide an opportunity for staff to mindfully reflect each year on their progress toward a fulfilled sense of belonging at the university and equity, diversity, and inclusion among their own staff members. From our research and discussions with staff from across campus, we understand that there may be skill gaps as it relates to equity, diversity, and inclusion among the university staff. And we hope that after a 360 review is implemented, our colleagues in HR could also be able to provide the support for employees who may score low on EDI components in their reviews and provide opportunities to take accountability and to engage with the EDI curriculum that empowers staff to take action toward and foster a more inclusive work culture at UCLA. And for our task force, accountability for the 360 reviews for managers and supervisors could look something like requiring managers and supervisors to set inclusive hiring and retention practices that align with those of senior leaders in their respective departments, and measuring feedback gathered from 360 reviews against those goals while empowering employees to seek support through the curriculum outlined in our first recommendation. So some of our desired outcomes from implementing a 360 review process for managers and supervisors include creating an intentional space for employees to assess their EDI efforts, identifying campus-wide definitions of EDI, and providing opportunities for implementation campus-wide as well. At a localized or team level, the current review process of top-down reviews does not always adequately allow for an opportunity to provide the university, department, or manager feedback. Often employees are not able to provide this type of feedback until the exit interview process when they have made the decision to leave the university. We hope that 360 reviews will allow for a formal process for feedback to be established and executed on an annual basis, allowing for bottom-up feedback throughout the employee's tenure at the university. 360 reviews will create accountability for managerial staff and faculty, encourage dialogue between managers and staff to support EDI efforts, and employ already existing 360 review resources offered by CHR org development. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Ray, who will introduce our third recommendation.
Thanks, Corey. The intention of our third recommendation is to begin the work of changing UCLA's academic culture to be a more equitable and inclusive work environment, and to create a sense of belonging for staff at all levels. In our current state, UCLA's culture marginalizes staff as the help included into decision-making processes. From faculty search committees to school-wide policy changes, non-management staff who will ultimately be charged with the implementation of care of service units, including academic departments, are often left out of conversations affecting change. As staff, we are praised for the work we do, but rarely respected and depended on for the knowledge, experience, and expertise that we have to offer after many years of service to the university. We should be allowed to participate at all levels of management as equal contributors to the decision-making processes, and not only looked at as an opinionated source of validation for faculty and administrative decisions. This recommendation also seeks to reimagine the working relationships that non-management staff have with faculty and administrators. The disparity in these relationships not only continues to foster the marginalization of staff, but also hinders staff in their professional development, upward mobility, and career advancement goals.
Okay, thank you, Ray. We had a lot of our task force members interview leaders on campus and management, asking them how this type of recommendation would benefit UCLA and staff throughout the campus. So I will go ahead and share that video with you now. It's a little bit over 3 minutes long. Let me just switch screens here.
I would say that the key benefits of involving staff early on in the planning process is that you gain valuable feedback right from the outset, and you have the ability to factor in diverse viewpoints that will inform important decisions. And then also it's an opportunity to increase staff engagement and empower staff to invest themselves more in their role and the organization.
One of the greatest things about having staff involved is not only do they understand the intricacies of the actual work itself, but they also know who are the stakeholders and the players, and they have those relationships. So I think really it's this combination of having that insight and the intel about the situation and the work itself, plus knowing the individuals who are part of that process. And
when we invite and include staff in our decision makings, it makes our job easier, it makes everybody's job easier, and it creates this community dynamic in which everybody feels of value and of service to the organization and the organizational goals in which you are trying to achieve. So
a second benefit of involving them is, on average, they're going to be more invested in the job, willing to put more into it. Makes sense if they're going to have more impact.
Not only do they have insight, but I also want the people who are working with me to take ownership of the mission of my Center for Climate Science. I want the people who are involved with it to feel like they are doing good by being part of it. They are not just following orders, they're actually empowered to see some of their own desires and wishes manifested in how we actually operate.
In my experience, staff really value the opportunity to take ownership and get involved and contribute to solutions, which in turn positively impacts both their job satisfaction and retention. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Said in terms of offering some practical solutions as to how to involve people, the first thing that I would say is ask them. If you don't know how to involve them, ask them how they want to be involved.
It can sound like the advice is tell your staff they're valued. And no, that's not the advice. The advice is value your staff.
It behooves us, if we want to advocate for inclusivity, it behooves us to remember everyone in our department and not just some narrow part of it.
You do have to have everyone, the right people at the table so that you know, the right people know what needs to get done.
It allows for, I think, greater energy and idea generation, not just within the role that they have, but then also in thinking about how this fits into the greater puzzle of what UCLA does, to then see potential places where we could enhance, change, create better impact for who we serve.
All right, so now I'm going to hand it back to Catherine to just go over our desired outcomes and conclusions.
Great, thank you. So as we just heard in the testimonials in the video, there are immense benefits to involving staff from all levels in decision-making processes at the university. It cultivates a sense of belonging and respect for the contributions and critical insights from every member of the team, which will result in a sense of community and enthusiasm around the staff experience. Involving staff from all levels also helps diversify who's involved in the decision-making at UCLA. It creates an opportunity to embed the EDI principles that we value into every aspect of the university. And just a few examples of where staff voices should be heard more are in hiring decisions, budget and strategic planning, and potential systems changes, particularly those that affect the work of all the staff. And so our recommendations work together to provide a comprehensive and inclusive experience for all staff, from recruitment and retention to development and hopefully advancement at UCLA. So step one, an EDI training curriculum for managers and staff empowers staff with information needed to create more equitable and inclusive environments. 360 reviews with an EDI component ensure staff remain accountable for the information they've learned, and EDI stays top of mind throughout the university. Human resources partnering with low-scoring managers provides essential support and guidance as they work to create equitable and inclusive environments. Managers developing EDI goals with their staff garners buy-in and participation from staff at all levels. And finally, including non-managerial staff in hiring, major committees, and key decision-making processes helps diversify representation, improve morale and retention through engagement, save university resources, and gains valuable knowledge from all staff. So again, these are our recommendations for 2020-21 that were included in our report. Task forces will be ramping up again for a new year of recommendations. So at this time, we will open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Morgan, actually through the whole panel, since we were talking about the task force, Catherine, what is it like being on the D&I task force, and how do you feel it's had an impact in your day-to-day at UCLA?
Well, I'll just say that it's been an incredible opportunity to serve on the task force by way of staff assembly. You know, my day-to-day is creative design work, working in marketing at Extension. So I don't get an opportunity really to work on EDI initiatives or co-lead such an important task force. So it's been very rewarding in that sense. And it's definitely not only made me aware, but it's also advanced my professional development. So it's been very rewarding. Yeah, and I'll hand the same question over to Corey.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the best parts was getting to meet people from different areas of campus. And it's something that has been able to build this committee, and being the first iteration of it, it was really great to have all those different perspectives in our committee group.
Catherine, how about you?
Yes. So this committee has been really interesting for me in several ways. In my department, I handle academic personnel, and one of the things that happened a few years ago was one of the requirements for our faculty in their merits and promotions was to include in their statement their efforts towards diversity and inclusion. And, as I was working on this task force, I became inspired to actually go back to my department and, actually give a voice, or not be silent and actually, pitch an idea to my chair that I thought would help in that endeavor for our faculty to, starting those that haven't already, start engaging in, the EDI arena a little bit more. And one of the things that I, did was start a discussion series, and it happens bi-monthly. And for the faculty, it'd be a way for them to come in and, have something, as part of their statement. And then also it was to include everyone from the department. So, we've often had our separate meetings. We have staff meetings, we have faculty, they have their meetings, labs have their separate meetings, but we didn't have something that we all got together to discuss an issue. And so that's what this series does. And I think being on this task force, gave me the confidence, I think, to, pursue it and actually, put my voice out there.
Cool. So I just see there's a question in the chat from Amy, and maybe we'll give this one to Corey. Can you describe what you envision the 360 reviews would entail?
Yeah, so what we were thinking of is that possibly similar to the reviews that we receive now, you would be able to fill out a similar review of your own supervisor or managers. That would be coming from the whole team. So it could come from people who both are supervisors of employees or then employees of supervisors, so that there's kind of like that two-way feedback that happens annually, instead of an employee, say like a support service employee who does not supervise or manage anybody, would have no opportunity to provide that feedback to their team, to their managers, if it wasn't formalized. So some people have really great managers that do take the time to meet with their employees and receive feedback on a regular basis, but this would just formalize the process so that in the event that an employee didn't get the opportunity, they would at least have it once a year.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hi.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, my pronouns are she, they. My boss is really supportive of pursuing and strengthening EDI policies within our department, but we've been having difficulty understanding where to start. Do you guys recommend any resources on campus that we can work with to get a better understanding of not just what we need to do, but just how to do it?
That's a really wonderful question, Emily. And I just saw that we do have Jonathan Perkins, who is also in attendance from the EDI office. So I just wanted to welcome Jonathan and not necessarily put you on the spot, but put you on the spot if possible. Oh, here we go. We have a link in the chat. So thank you, Jonathan, for that. Hi.
I love being put on the spot. That is that's what gets me through the day. So I love that. Yes, happy to chime in here from the EDI office. We are in the process. Well, sorry, let me stop. My name's Jonathan Perkins. My pronouns are he, him. Hello, everyone. I've had the biggest dumb, goofy smile on my face during this whole presentation. So thank you for that on this Tuesday. I've just dropped in a link to our growing training hub on our EDI website. This is something that is being spearheaded by the new Vice Chancellor, Anna Spain Bradley. We realized after taking sort of a survey over the last summer of the university that there are a ton of resources, but they're sort of scattered everywhere and not a lot of people know about them. And so we're really trying to distill everything down into easily usable toolkits is what we're going to be calling them. And so you'll be able to see access to some of the preliminary sort of outlines for the toolkits that we're going to be putting together. But in the link that I just sent to you, there's a ton of resources. It's not quite as streamlined and sort of curated as it's going to be over the next couple of months, but please know that that is where you should be looking for that if you'd like the EDI office's input. I'm also going to drop the email address of Lily Hsu, which is, she's the head of our sort of training resources at EDI. She used to work in our discrimination prevention office and has now taken on this role full time. So I'm going to put her email in the chat as well. Stopping talking now, but again, we're being put on the spot. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it, Jonathan. Catherine, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something really quickly to Emily. Depending on, I mean, one of the things that I thought of is that, you know, as staff, we have to, or, you know, come with whatever knowledge we have and come from our place. So like I said, I do academic personnel. So one area that I thought I could do something was in that arena. And that's why I thought of, you know, having this series for my faculty to come in and discuss EDI issues as a segue into getting into EDI and, you know, pumping up their statements. And I see that Stephanie Fisher is on here. And Stephanie is a CAO. And so Stephanie and her group have done this really cool thing. And I'm a part of this as well. So I appreciate them inviting me in. So Stephanie and her group have a podcast, a discussion group based on Ibram X. Kendi's to be anti-racist. And it's an interesting group of people from different areas who come together every week. We listen to the podcast, and then we come and we break into little groups and discuss the issues. And the podcast has many different topics. So depending on how you want to do it, like for me, we have a bi-monthly series. And what we've been doing is we'll bring someone like, we recently had the Vice Dean for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion come visit our group. And then, you know, he came to talk about his vision, but then he also came and talked to us about interrupting microaggressions. And we had a discussion on that. And then we also had Julian McNeil, who is the coordinator in the anti-racism roadmap. And we're gonna have Natalie Perry, who is the program lead for our cultural North Star. So basically what you can do is like, you can have a situation where you can invite people who are subject matter experts on something to lead a discussion, you know, help you facilitate discussions. Or if you're brave, like with, you know, Stephanie's group, and they can get together and they, you know, come up with something that everyone can watch together, and then they facilitate it themselves. So it depends on, you know, where you're coming from in your arena and how you want to do it.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Emily, for the question. Are there any other questions before we go into the second portion of our Learn at Lunch today?
Morgan, could I just ask one question? So the initiatives sound amazing. And how can we individually and as a group be part of them getting the traction to actually go through the different food chains at the university to become adopted and recognized? I mean, do the 360 is something I feel like I have heard different efforts at different times in my career at UCLA, and it just feels like it struggles to get traction, and it seems so essential and so overdue. So is that, maybe that's even part of what we're going to still talk about, but how do we help affect these initiatives so that they don't sit on a shelf like a thesis, you know?
Yes, no, I know. And you know, we presented to the Chancellor's Cabinet back in April, and we're hoping that they take these recommendations further. But I know that 360 reviews in the past have been quite costly, but new 360 reviews are kind of become, there's more and more companies that are doing them now, and they're becoming less expensive. So that I think will pave the way to make this more of a reality. But again, we only are presenting our recommendations. So, you know, we're doing our best to push them forward and work with leadership to understand them. But it's also part of leadership to, you know, then take these recommendations and move forward with them. But I also wanted to invite either Lucy or Jessica to perhaps add a little bit more to that answer. I'm putting people on the spot again.
Sorry, Morgan, I don't think Lucy's on, but I had to step away from my computer for a second. So can you repeat what the question is?
Yes. Stephanie, would you just like to, so that I don't put words in your mouth?
I just wanted to hear if there's any ideas, suggestions, or call to action, anything we can do individually or as, you know, people on this call and interested in what these recommendations are and wanting to help give them, you know, give them a push and be supporting them and not relenting on the support for them. Like what are we can be involved, or what are the next steps? Because the recommendations are excellent. I'd love to see them go somewhere. And I can already think of a few things within my department and my school of things we might do. And Catherine, I'll be reaching out to you for some chatting about that. But you know, there just might be some, if there are any ideas from this group of here's things you can do. It's not pressure. You don't have to have defined everything about this. I just wondered if there were questions.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And thank you for asking that. So formally, if you want to get involved, we do recruit for our task force groups every year. So even though the survey is only sent biannually, we keep our task force work going annually for staff assembly. And that's just to, you know, continue to work on actually getting to the implementation phase of these great recommendations. So it's kind of like an every other year, we spend a year working with the current survey data, coming up with recommendations, and then the follow-up to that is how do we implement them throughout the university. So if you want to get involved formally, you can join a task group, join the EDI task group for this upcoming year. As Morgan mentioned at the beginning of this Learn at Lunch, we're going to be recruiting volunteers to serve in these task forces. So we have a number of priority areas that we choose based on what our survey data looks like for our campus. So there's a great benefit to getting involved, as many of our task force members today have shared just some of the things that they get from being involved in this work. So that's a more direct way. But in general, I think, you know, with these recommendations, anybody can affect change within your department, more broadly within your unit. So I think, you know, it's just a matter of taking the initiative and you know, really suggesting to your own internal leadership of, you know, ideas that you maybe heard on this call, informed by this task force work, of some ideas of how to make positive change for your colleagues in your own team. But that's just a quick overview of, you know, how to more formally, if you want to get involved. We definitely appreciate the time and the efforts of all of our volunteers.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, are there any other questions? And I think that was like the perfect segue to go into the second portion of our Learn at Lunch and talk a little bit about the task forces and recruitment and timelines and all that good stuff. So Jess, what is the timeline looking like? And, you know, I know that we have lots in the works and lots planned. So perhaps you could just give a brief overview and give everyone an idea of how to get involved.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Morgan. So we do finally have our survey data back for our 2021 survey. So it was released during the summer. And again, it's a biannual survey that's conducted by Willis Towers Watson. So it comes out every other year, usually during the summer. And then in the fall, we end up getting our survey data back for our campus. And then we also are able to see the system-wide results, which will show how our campus kind of compares to the other UCs within the system. And then there's a couple other data points that they compare to the US norm in some of these categories. And then there's also a specific comparison to other universities across the US and not just the UC system. But more broadly. So we look at all that survey data and we kind of see, you know, how have our results improved from our last survey, which was administered in 2019. And we use those results to kind of inform, you know, what are the priority areas for our campus that we feel like we need to work on. And so it's exciting to share that from our engagement survey task force areas that we had created over the last year, all of our key areas of the survey saw improvement from the 2019 survey. So I think that just attests to the powerful work of these task force groups and shows that it really is possible to affect positive change for campus, for the university, and for all staff. So right now we're looking at those survey results and we will be sharing them on our staff assembly website. Shortly. We're gonna post some graphics and things that, you know, staff can just look through on their own time. And then we will also be setting up a survey town hall to kind of do a more of a deep dive into the data and take a look at what those results are and some of the questions that inform these priority areas that are asked on the survey. And then, you know, from there, we plan on essentially ramping up our task force work again this year to not only, you know, continue to push forward these recommendations to make sure that they actually are able to be implemented on campus, either, you know, university-wide, or a lot of times staff assembly will also find ways to help implement some of the recommendations from our task forces. So one example from a prior task force work group is we ended up creating the Invest in You Summit as a way to focus on professional development and career growth. So that's just one example of how staff assembly can also, you know, take some recommendations from these task forces and actually implement them into, you know, programs and activities for staff to participate in. So I'm going to also share a link in the chat for anybody that wants to sign up to join our task force work. Feel free to sign up on that form. And we'll basically use your contact info to get some availability from folks to gear up a task force wide call so we can kind of see, you know, who's interested in what priority areas and kind of split everybody up into teams to start working for the upcoming year. So if you're interested, definitely sign up, and please share with, you know, anybody else that you know of who might be interested. This work is open to all staff. So the CUCSA survey itself is only sent to policy covered staff just because of the nature of how CUCSA operates and staff assembly. But any staff can be involved in this task force work because really the work that we're doing impacts everybody, not just policy covered staff. So I definitely want to emphasize that it's literally open to anybody to join if you have an interest. Even if you're not staff, we had some faculty members join last year's work groups. So we definitely enjoy having a variety of perspectives in these task forces. So definitely share out with whomever you think might be interested, and we'll be in contact shortly. And then you know, in terms of what it looks like actually working on a task force, I'll leave that up to the leaders from our EDI task force to chime in on, you know, how it's been in terms of like time commitment and things like that. I know Corey dropped in the chat, but I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, about what it looks like to actually be involved in doing the work.
Yes, so we did meet twice a month, ongoing for approximately 8 months. And, yes, it's a lot of work, but, when you're doing work that feels so good to be doing, it just goes by so quickly. And the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And I just think it's such a reward to be part of the task force, both either in a co-lead position or just serving on the task force and attending when you can and providing your insight when you can. So it really is up to how much time you have to spend. And the more, I think, like I said, the more time you have, I think the more you'll get out of it. And thanks for sharing that link for the forms. That's good.
Yeah, and I see Lucy's on now too, so I want to just give her a few minutes if she wants to add anything else to what I was discussing, since Lucy, as our immediate past president last year, was really like the driving force, leading all of our task force work and coordinating everybody with meetings, and she put a lot of work and effort into getting the meeting set up to present to senior leadership. So Lucy, if you have anything else you want to mention specifically about the task force work, feel free.
Thanks, Jess. It's definitely a team effort. And, I think the participation is like of all staff and, everybody can contribute. So I really encourage everybody to get involved in one way or another. There's no pressure in terms of like what your commitment has to be. As long as there's communication, I think, everybody will have a good time and be a part of the impact. So I highly encourage everybody to get involved in one way or another.
Thanks, Lucy. I'm glad you joined. Okay, I think we're close to wrapping up. Jerry, I'm going to hand the floor back to you and just see if there's anything else you want to share.
Well, first of all, thank you all for your presentation. This was really great information, and I hope all of you who joined us got something out of it. And please use the resources that were included on the chat to move forward with your particular efforts. If there aren't any other questions, we look forward to seeing you to our next staff assembly Learn at Lunch this Thursday. It's on the Empower Her Mentor Recruitment, which is also somewhat related to our EDI efforts. So please join us. And thank you, everybody.